Well, good evening, good evening, good evening. Thank you for coming in. And this is where you want to be. If you've never taken a journey from Genesis to Revelations, that's exactly what we're doing here at 6 o'clock every evening. 30 minutes of teaching and then question and A, Q&A, and we're out. So tonight we're going to start right back up, and we are dealing with Abraham and his sacrifice of Isaac is how this is titled for those of you that may be looking and watching and following along. We are on January the 20th. Incidents in Abraham's life. His name has been changed at this point. And we're going to go straight to Genesis chapter 22, verses 1 through 19. So let's go ahead and put that up and we're going to get started. And it came to pass after these things that God did tempt Abraham and said unto him, Abraham, and he said, Behold, here I am. And he said, Take now thy son, thine only son Isaac, whom thou lovest, and get thee into the land of Moriah, and after him there for a burnt and offer, him there for a burnt offering upon one of the mountains which I will tell thee of. And Abraham rose up early in the morning and saddled his ass, and took two of his young men with him, and Isaac his son, and clave the wood for the burnt offering, and rose up and went up to the place of which God had told him. Then on the third day, Abraham lifted up his eyes and saw the place afar off. And Abraham said unto his young men, Abide ye here with the ass, and I and the lad will go yonder and worship and come to you again. And Abraham took the wood off of the burnt offering and laid it upon Isaac his son. And he took the fire in his hand and a knife, and they went both of them together. Now, I don't know about you, but if I had been Isaac by now, I think I would have been a little sus, as the young folks say these days. I would have been a little sus. At the point in time that, Abraham obviously is getting ready to go and have a sacrifice. And eventually, the baby's going to say, well, hold up, daddy, what's going on? But he takes the wood of the burnt offering and lays it on his son. And he took the fire in his hand and the knife. So he's got everything that he needs to get this done. Abraham is he's moving in a place of obedience. This is where God has told him to do what he feels in his heart and spirit, and he's going by faith. Doesn't even know, as it said, I'll tell you the place. And apparently the Lord spoke to him and said, This is the place, because Abraham is like, okay, I see the far off. And Isaac spake unto Abraham his father and said, My father. And he said, Here am I, my son. And he said, Behold, the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for the burnt offering? Now, hello now. Things are starting to get a little sus. What's really getting ready to happen here? And Abraham said, My son, God will provide himself a lamb for a burnt offering. So they went both of them together. And they came to the place which God had told him of. And Abraham built an altar there, excuse me, and laid the wood in order, and bound Isaac his son, and laid him upon the altar of wood. And Abraham stretched forth his hand and took the knife to slay his son. Now, I always marvel at this because obviously this is a place where I want us to understand Isaac obviously had total faith and trust in his father. Because remember, it's just the two of them. Abraham told his servants to, you guys hang back. Isaac and I are going to go up. We're going to do sacrifice. But he did say he was going to return. They would return. So there's that faith factor that's still working. But I'm bringing up the point. This child is old enough that it's just Abraham and his father. When they come to the place, and Abraham built the altar there and laid the wood in order and bound his son and laid him on the altar upon the wood. There had to be a level of obedience, if you will, again, trust, if you will, belief in his father and his father's desire to do what God told him to do, and believing that God was going to deliver him too. Because listen, Isaac is young enough. You talking about Abraham was 100 years old when Isaac was born. Do you not know, honey? I would have been booking. I would have been running. I would have been flat out in the wind. But there had to be a yieldedness on Isaac's part, because even as a young man, he possibly could have overtaken his father physically. But here we see not only Abraham, who is obedient to what God is speaking to them to do, even though they don't fully understand it. And that part, how many times does God ask us to step out and do a thing by faith, even when we don't fully understand it? Sometimes we think we have an idea of what's going on, but we don't fully understand. I can only imagine, honestly, what is going through Isaac's mind as his father is laying this wood out, making the altar, then binding me up and laying me down with the knife. There had to be that questioning that was in the back of the mind, whether or not it was spoken or otherwise. But there's still this trust factor that's going on, that they are in the will of God. And so that sometimes it seems so odd. It seems so almost crazy, if you will. It seems so out of the ordinary. Sometimes the things that God speaks to us to do, but all we have to do is be yielded to it. You know, I've known people that have, God has spoken to them, and after their relationship was not the same. Come on, thank you for that, Silky Lettuce. And so we have this element of, where are we at in this process? Where are we at in the yieldedness and obedience to God, even if it seems crazy to us, even if it seems unusual to us? You know, I know some individuals, God told them to shave their head. I know some individuals, God has told them to do various different things. The issue is not the act itself. The issue is your obedience to hear and trust and believe the voice of God, and just move in that space and in that place as a yielded vessel. So we see here, they came to the place, and Abraham stretched forth his hand and took the knife to slay his son. Now this is how serious Abraham is. But remember what God said to him. Abraham said, God is going to provide himself a lamb. God is going to provide himself an offering. So all the way to the point where he takes the knife into his hand to slay his son, he still has spoken by faith. And what did God, we talked about this on yesterday, even in his place of growth, even in his place of development, God still called Abraham his prophet, even when Abraham was doing some off the wall stuff. But one thing that we can say about Abraham, Abraham knew and heard the voice of the Lord when the Lord was speaking. And so he still, had that confidence. God's going to provide himself a lamb. So at the end of the day, the angel of the Lord called unto him out of heaven and said, Abraham, Abraham, And he said, here I am I. And he said, lay not thine hand upon the lad, neither do thou anything unto him. For now I know that thou fearest God, seeing that thou hast not withheld thy son, thine only son, from me. Now, understand, this is actually a foreshadowing. This is a foreshadowing of John 3:16. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. We see the foreshadowing of that, in that even though Abraham did not have to sacrifice his son, there was a lamb, there was a ram in the bush that was provided. There was a sacrifice that was provided. We see here the same of God giving his son Jesus and as that sacrificial lamb. We see this, and the difference being where Abraham was provided a substitute, Jesus went through the process and gave himself for us, and God was willing to release his only begotten son so that we could have everlasting life. Abraham lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, behind him a ram caught in a thicket by his horns. And Abraham went and took the ram and offered him up for a burnt offering in the stead of his son. Now, if wasn't nobody happy and shouting and honey carrying on and cavorting, please believe, I'm sure when Isaac was released from that altar, if anybody was happy to hear that ram and see him caught by his horns in the thicket, I know Isaac was like, thank you. Thank you, Lord. Because at the end of the day, as I said, him being a child, a young man that was big enough, he could have resisted. He could have ran off. He could have overpowered his father. Again, by sheer age and stamina, he had he had happy feet, truck driver. He had happy feet. Lord, today. And he also had an increase of faith. He had that increase of faith to know that God is not going to just leave me out here. But again, speaking to his yieldedness and his obedience that he had to have to allow, after his father took the wood and made the altar and then bound him and laid him down on the altar and got ready to slay him, he had to have a trust in his father's knowing God and hearing God and in God himself to really, really submit himself to this whole scenario. So here we have the provision. And Abraham called the name of that place Jehovah Jireh, as it is said to this day, in the mount of the Lord it shall be seen. And we often hear people who will teach on this text, and Jehovah Jireh, the Lord who provides. This is the place where out of nothing, God will provide exactly what you need in that space and in that place. And the angel of the Lord called unto Abraham out of heaven the second time and said, by myself have I sworn, said the Lord, for because thou hast done this thing and hast not withheld thine son, thine only son. And remember, this is a foreshadowing of God himself giving his only begotten son. That in blessing I will bless thee, and in multiplying I will multiply thy seed as the stars of the heaven, and as the sand which is upon the seashore, and thy seed shall possess the gates of his enemies. Come on here. And in thy seed shall all the nations of the earth be blessed, because thou hast obeyed my voice. So Abraham returned unto his young men, and they rose up. Now remember, he told them at the very beginning, we're coming back to you. He didn't say I. He said, we're coming back to you. So you see all of his words, the verbiage that he used, the conversation that he had was continuously of faith and believing that God was going to perform some kind of miracle. He didn't know what, he didn't know how, he didn't question all of that. All he did was step by step, because even as I said, when the Lord spoke to him and told him to go and find a place, and he would tell him where the place was, he didn't even really know where he was going, but he was yielded to the word and the Spirit of God to tell him. Now, out of this scripture, I often like to say, many of us, our promise would have been dead. Our promise would have been slain on the altar. Why? Because so many times we do hear the Lord give us an instruction, but we'll begin to interpret out of our own minds, out of our own thoughts, out of our own flesh, what it is that the Lord is saying and what it is that the Lord wants us to do. And mind you, all the way up to the point where Abraham had raised the knife. He's built the altar. He's placed the wood out there. He's bound the baby and put him up on the altar, and he's raised the knife. Many of us would have come down even when the angel of the Lord said and called out to him, Abraham, Abraham. So many times we can become so fixated on a thing, on a word that God has spoken to us, that when there comes the provision, because the angel of the Lord cried out to tell him, listen, you don't have to do this. Now, the Lord knows that you are willing to give your only son. And this covenant is not just lip service. This covenant is for real. And so at that point, to be able to hear the voice of the Lord and hear something different than what we first understood. This is a place of challenge for us to be sensitive to the Lord, because sometimes the Lord is really trying to just allow us to see our own faithfulness to him, how committed we are to him, how dedicated we are to hearing his word and being sensitive to his voice and or to the angel of the Lord. And God can be manifest by there. Some of you, the Bible talks about how we entertain angels unawares. And then sometimes God, because angel is just a messenger, sometimes God will speak to and through someone, and we won't hear the angel of the Lord, i.e. the voice of the Lord through his messenger, through his servant, because of who it is, because of whatever our hang up is about that individual or even about the situation. God will come with a fresh rhema word that is seemingly to rescind what we understood the Lord to be telling us before. And Abraham wasn't off point. He heard what the Lord told him to do, and he was operating in that. However, you have to be sensitive step by step. Don't ever become so brazen. And I know this is what I know he told me, and I know what he told me. And your Isaac is dead. Your promise is dead. Your seed that you have been given to bless you, and where, as God said, I'm going to make you as the stars of the heavens. I'm going to make you as the sands of the earth. And we come up and that thing is killed because we are so rambunctious in our own strength, in our own mind, in our own thoughts, in our own inability to hear whoever the messenger is that the Lord sends as an angel on his behalf to speak a rhema word to us, a right now word. We would have missed that opportunity. There's so much here in this story. There's so much here on the part of Isaac. And again, he had a yieldedness in the faith that he was operating in. There's so much, obviously, with Abraham, and again, that sensitivity to that right now word. And it had, again, I'm going to go back to that point of the right now word, even to the degree where we even stopping to have this sacrifice, because God hasn't even told me that. But that's not unusual, because remember when Abram, as he was before his name was changed to Abraham, God told him to get up. Listen, Abraham, of the Chaldeans, I need you to get up out of here, and I need you to just go to a land that I'm going to tell you of, that I'm going to show you. And he just got up and began to put one foot in front of the other. And this is really so much of what we see about Abraham's faith. He gets his intel a little bit at a time. And that for some of us is a problem, because we want a whole picture. We want a whole chart. We want a whole layout. God, if I don't have it all, if I don't have the total vision, then I'm not going to bust a move. I'm not going to take a step. This is so powerful that God speaks to him step by step. And I want us to be in a mindset that there are going to be times when God has no intention of showing you the full big picture. Because if you saw the full big picture, you would freak out and probably run and go the opposite direction. You would have panic attacks. You would have, fill in the blank. We would have a negative reaction and a negative response because it would be so overwhelming. And even sometimes the little sliver that God shows us, we already are backing up like Fred Flintstone putting on the brakes. I can't see it. Lord, you talking to me? You talking about me? You can't be talking about me because, listen, I'm a nobody. I'm nothing. I'm da 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 da. And we come with all these different ideas of how we do not have the ability to do what it is that God is calling us to do. So we done shut down before we even get started. But I love how God deals with Abraham and just giving him slivers of knowledge that he can handle just for that appointed time. You do that, manifest your obedience. Then we just show you the next part. Manifest your obedience. Do the next part, manifest your obedience. And the thing that we need to do is just be consistent in manifesting our obedience and trust God to give us. And if he's not giving you the whole picture, because some of us will actually become angered, if you will, with God, because God, I've been down here on my face seeking you and you still haven't shown me the whole picture. There are times he's not going to give you the whole picture, baby. I just can't say that enough. And there's no point in being frustrated and irritated and refusing to start. That's the thing for some of you. You won't start because you want the whole picture. And it's like, no, it's not for you to have the whole picture. Take the word that I spoke to you and operate on that word. Understand what I'm saying? Take the little bit that I've shown you and revealed to you and be obedient to that and operate on that word. Just do that, baby, just one step at a time. How, as they say in the proverb, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. You can't eat the whole elephant all at once. You can't see the entire vision all at once. You can't digest the whole vision that God has for you all at once. Take the bit that God gives you and then be obedient to that word. Then take the next phase and be obedient. And listen, I'm telling you, that's how you build and develop character. That's how you build and develop stamina. That's how you build and develop accuracy in hearing the voice of the Lord. Hear me when I say this, because sometimes we want to get this big grandiose picture and we have no clue. We have no idea. We're just out there roaming and wandering in the wilderness in a solitary way and have no idea where we are or what we're doing. We're just flapping and flailing. And it's like, baby, God just wanted you to get just a small piece, just a taste, just a touch, and then be obedient to that so that, number one, you can learn to know my voice. And that's the one thing I'm going to say about Abraham. Like a fish out of water, Phoenix Systems, just like a fish out of water. That's the thing that I love about Abraham. Abraham definitely knows the voice of the Lord, and he knows when the angels are speaking to him. He knows when God's messengers are speaking. He's clear. He's clear on communication with heaven. This is something that we've got to do, because what I see more times than not, the Bible says, my sheep know my voice, and another that they will not follow. But what I see a lot of times are people that are out there and it's like, God, is this you? I don't know. I'm just out here guessing. Is this the voice of the Lord, or is this the voice of the Lord? And listen, the middle wall of petition has been taken away. What do you mean by that, spiritual thought leader? That intermediary, that go between. And I know, and we've really made this of our pastors and preachers and seers and spiritual people, that's whatever you want to call them. But at the end of the day, why go through an intermediary when the middle wall of petition has been taken away and you have direct access to God to hear him and hear his voice and interact and have relationship and fellowship with him and let him tell you directly? Even as I often use it in the way that we deal there, it's almost like the game of gossip. The word comes out and somebody says whatever it is, but by the time you send it through this person, and this person, by the time it gets back to you, it's but it may be a word or two of what was originally said, but the rest of it is twisted and disfigured. And this is exactly what happens when we continue to have this reliance and dependence on all these intermediaries. Baby, it's prophets running around everywhere. And as my father said, many of them are lying prophets. But at the end of the day, or their only gain point, or their only purpose is to profit, profit. So we have gotten sucked in such a way that we don't know the voice of God, or we're very unsure and we're very uncertain. But I guarantee you, if you do it, even as we look at Abraham, and take a sliver at a time, take a step at a time, take a piece at a time, take a word at a time, be consistent in your obedience one at a time, it will develop something in you where you can have absolute and total clarity. I promise you it will. Truck driver, I was told so many times, but wanted the whole picture and missed out on the blessing. But when I did listen, my life changed. Come on here, truck driver, you better testify. And isn't that how it happens so many times, truck? We want that whole picture, and we miss out on the blessing because we didn't get the revelation of the entire picture. And even some of the teaching that we'll get is, got child, if you ain't got the whole thing, sit there and be still. But at the end of the day, God just wants you to be obedient to his voice. And if he only showed you from point A to point B, all you need right now is from point A to point B, but you need to be obedient in point A, getting to point B. But you don't need to sit up and worry about C, D, E, F, and G, A prime to Z prime. You just need to be obedient in the place that you are, and you will be blessed for your obedience, and you will grow. So that's where we get into a place where, again, steps, increments. We want to be giants in the land all at once. But baby, you got to crawl before you can walk. You got to walk before you can run. But by all means, as somebody said, keep moving. You know, I'm not in a place, in a position to try to rebuke and beat anybody down that has missed. We all miss from time to time, because as we learn and as we grow, it's a developmental thing going on in stages. And then there's also that factor that sometimes there's static on the line, so it's not coming through clearly. Things are going on in our world where there's so much going on in and around us that we don't hear clearly. But this is where we've got to discipline ourselves and create and maintain that intimacy with God so that we can have clarity. Learn how to get rid of the static. Learn how to get rid of trying to listen to everybody else's words. The middle wall of petition has been taken away. You can go directly to the Father and have access and have communication and have intimacy. You don't need everybody to tell you all that you need to do. I want you to get your information from God. Do you understand? Now, again, I'm going to go back to the point that even with Abraham, even as he had drawn the knife, it wasn't Abraham talking directly to God, but the angel of the Lord cried out and said, Abraham, Abraham, don't do it. And then gave him instruction. So I'm not omitting the realities of listening to angels and messengers. That's all angels are, messengers of God. And yes, I do believe that there are angels that are supernatural. So I'm not eliminating that either. But I also want to say it may be your sister, your brother, your child, somebody that you know in a spiritual journey. It may be the coworker on the job. You never know who God is going to utilize as that angel to speak a message to you. But be clear in your understanding. That was the Lord speaking to me. That was the Lord. I want you to know that clarity, and you'll have a confirmation in your spirit. And let me address that, because one of the things that I do see so many times is that you know, people come out, like I said, you got lying prophets running everywhere. People just woke up one day and said, I'm a prophet. Literally, they just woke up one day and said, I'm a prophet. Everybody else is a prophet. I'm a prophet. You got people that woke up and said, I'm an apostle. I'm a this. You got people that anointed themselves. I'm a bishop. So all of these things that people are clamoring after to have titles, and then they come out and they start speaking all this stuff, and then people are confused. They're genuinely confused. Well, it was the man or woman of God told me da 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 da. But this is what I do want you to do. When you hear every word of God will be established. When you hear a word, there should be a confirmation in your spirit. there should be a connect that happens in your spirit, even if you want to fight against it. And I know this to be true. Somebody can speak a true word from the Lord to you that you don't want to hear, but there's still something down in your spirit that'll be like, yep, that's right. Even when it's not the word you want to hear, something in your spirit, because the God spirit in you will connect with the spirit that's speaking to you through them, and it'll be like, yep, yep. Even though my head is like, nope, 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 I don't receive that. But something down all the way in deep Shando will be like, yep, yep, that, I know that's true, even though I'm fighting it, even though I'm mad about it, even though that's not what I want to hear right now. Something down in your spirit, will co-sign that thing. So come on in here, Crystal Method. That is the truth. And so at the end of the day, this is where I want us to be open to growth, even as what I want to go back up to what Phoenix System said. Baby steps. There's nothing wrong with baby steps. Do this thing in baby steps, but do it in a way so you can be solid. I want you to be solid. I don't want you to be wishy-washy. I don't want you to be flapping in the wind. I don't want you confused. There's so many people that are confused. And especially when you have, and I'm not saying that in a negative way, I'm saying that with actually some hurt in my heart, because you're being confused by things that people are telling you that are off the wall, just off the wall stuff. And people out here prophesying and saying some of everything. I've heard some of the craziest stuff, and I'm just like, where are y'all getting these teachings from? Oh my God. But you know, it's what I want to say, it's trendy. It's what people are talking at the time. It's what people are speaking. It's what, and so people walk around and they latch onto this stuff because they don't know the word, because they don't have a relationship with God, because they are confused and don't know the voice of the Lord. They don't know when somebody's speaking as a messenger of God and when somebody's talking out of their flesh. Or as my one of my father's friends, preacher, used to say, he said, listen, y'all having fat meat greasy dreams. That's what that was. That was a fat meat greasy dream. God wasn't in that. But folks can't tell the difference. If they're standing at that podium, if they're standing in a position of authority and power, people don't know whether or not, was that right, was that wrong. Baby, you're gonna have to have relationship so that you can understand and be clear. And listen, I'm gonna tell you what, and I'm gonna say this, and this almost sounds funny, but I'm so serious. I can remember when a young man kept telling me, the Lord told me you're my wife. The Lord told me you're my wife. And listen, I'm gonna tell you, there was no quickening, there was no confirmation, there was no agreement, there was no attesting to that in my spirit, any way, shape, or form. And it wasn't gonna be, because it wasn't nothing about him that I liked. Wasn't nothing about him that I liked. The Lord wouldn't get ready to settle me down with something I don't even like. Y'all ain't ready for me, but I'm telling the truth. And so there was no confirmation in my spirit. And I knew at the end of the day, you know, why he kept trying to say, calling me on the phone and everything. But I'm telling you what the Lord said. No, the Lord didn't tell you that, baby, because you're not for me. I don't want you. And you know, now I didn't say it in such a crude way, but I'm just being truthful. There wasn't nothing in me wanted him. And I got tickled because he messed around, got married, and the woman's name was Regina. I said, well, apparently the Lord didn't give him the last name. The Lord must not have gave him the last name. But at the end of the day, he took that Regina through hell. Can I just break it off and make it plain? He took that Regina through Hell hell. And at the end of the day, I said, oh, I know he wasn't for me. So you can keep on calling me and trying to press me. The Lord told me, and I know I'm a man of God, and I know what the Lord showed me. Baby, if the Lord showed you me and I'm involved, he's going to show you to me as well. It's not a one-sided vision. So this is where I want, listen, CJ, man, and I'm trying to tell you that part. No. You got to have an understanding. And I know for a fact, even if he was a potential, even if this brother was a potential, there would have been some confirmation out of the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses shall every word be established. And first thing, baby, you're going to have to, I'm going to have a witness. That's going to be one of the witnesses in the 2 or 3 witnesses. So at the end of the day, I want you all to really, really have a development in your spirit so that people do not have you blown about with every wind and doctrine that they come out with every prophetic word that they done come, as the preacher said, with that fat meat greasy dream. No, no. I know my sheep know my voice, and another they will not follow. So I want you to learn how to develop that ability to have a confirmation in your spirit, a confirmation within. And like I said, there are going to be times people are going to speak stuff to you you don't want to hear. But I promise you, there's still something down in your shondo that'll be like, yep. So, and as I say, if you want to know the truth, God will always reveal the truth to you. So it may even be a matter of while you're resisting at this phase, at this stage, somewhere as you want and seek to know the truth, God will manifest that. I promise you, He will. At the end of the day, I want you all to know God. I want you to know God directly. What we see again, Abraham is manifesting relationship. Am I over my time? I'm 6 minutes over. He's manifesting relationship with God. He's manifesting knowing the voice of God. He's manifesting listening to the messenger and the angels of God. He is manifesting obedience to God. He's manifesting, and I'm going to say this again, the ability to hear a fresh rhema word. The ability to hear a fresh rhema word. I want you to understand that. I know what God told me to do. And yes, I know that I told the men that I left down at the bottom of the mountain, we're going up and we'll be back. But at the same time, hey, I am going forth in what God spoke to my heart to do. But at the same time, I am able to hear the angel of the Lord tell me to hold up and do something different. I'm not so hell bent on doing my first word that I can't hear the second word. All right. So I'm going to stop right there. And that's our teaching for tonight. I'm going to come up, and I appreciate those of you all that are coming in. It's good to see you. Go ahead and ask any questions, make any comments, any interjections to what I've said. There's a lot more here, but you all know I'm just trying to really hit highlights, if you will, and deal with those highlights. And then you're reading. I hope that you're reading and doing the reading daily so that you can keep up with the word of the Lord. Again, I can't cover everything because the readings are about an hour per day worth of reading if you're actually doing the reading that's prescribed for that day. I'm just picking out the highlights and touching on what I can. Truck driver Mufasa, it's so good to see you, sir. Nothing but love to you. Silky Lettuce, come on in here, and it's good to see you as well. Thank you for coming. Blessings upon blessings to you. Cassandra Isaiah, good evening to you. Oh, man, it is so awesome to see you. And listen, you all give Cassandra some birthday wishes. She was in here. The first day she came in was actually, well, the first time that I saw her, and she came in talking, it was actually her birthday. So it's been a few days back. But happy belated birthday to you. And you know, I love you some. I love me some you. Phoenix Systems, it's always a blessing to have you come in and share insights and thoughts with us. Thank you so much for coming in tonight. I appreciate you for being in the chat. Crystal Method, I'm trying to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me God. I love you, sis. Thank you for coming in tonight. Coming on down, and I saw CJ Manning in the house cracking up. I see you laughing, but I told the truth, baby, because, honey, he wasn't my husband. I'm telling you, he was not. Just didn't get that last name right. And really, he did the other Regina so bad, I wish he had left her alone too. Okay, now coming on. I'm up to the story of Joseph. Excellent. Thank you. So it's a blessing. Now, as I said, I want some of y'all to go ahead and read ahead of the text because ahead of the days, because I'm going to be out for not this week, but the week after. So I'm going to miss some days in there, but we don't want to lose track. And I'm not going to try and teach because I'm going to be out of the country. So I want you to stay abreast and stay caught up and actually stay just a little bit ahead so that we don't fall behind in our reading. Again, for those that this may be your first time here and wondering what's this about, if you've never read from Genesis to Revelations, this is the place you want to be. That's what we're going to do 6 o'clock every evening right here in this location. And we are doing it through the chronological Bible, both the Tyndale The Tyndale, let me grab that so you can see it for those that may want to get it. This is the 1 year chronological Bible. This is more of the beginner's Bible. And then I also have outline for Reese's chronological Bible that's out there in my Discord. And I'm kind of fusing the two together so that we can get a full understanding, but we're doing it from the place of chronology. I'm going to say this before we leave. I'm going to cover these last few things for today. We have, after that, Abraham learns of his brother Nahor's family, Genesis 22, and then going on through the rest of that chapter. We have the death of Sarah at 127 years old. The death of Sarah at 127 years old. Then we have the death of Job, approximately 200 years, circa 1827. Again, thank you so much for that, CJ Manning. The death of Job, and that jumps back to Job 42, verses 16 through 17. Then we have Rebekah chosen for Isaac, Genesis 24, verses 1 through 67, and then Genesis 25, verse 20. And then we're going to go on. Now, we had a game that we played at my church called King and Queen of the Chair, where you would ask a question and to be able to get a point. If you were in the chair, the king or the queen, depending on your gender, you would get a point for every question that you asked correctly. This was one of my get folks out the chair question. What was the name of Abraham's second wife? And many times, most of the people didn't know what her name was. Most of the people didn't know Abraham had another wife. But after Sarah died at 127 years, around circa 1830 BC, then around 1826 BC, Genesis 25 and 1, we see where Abraham marries Keturah. So that was it wasn't my only one, but it was one of my favorite questions I knew I could pull out and ask in King and Queen of the Chair, and it was almost guaranteed to get me the chair every time, because most folks didn't know that Abraham had another wife. But her name was Keturah, and you can read about her again, Genesis chapter 25, verse 1, and then it begins to talk about Abraham's children, Genesis 25, 2 to 4, and also 1 Chronicles 1, 32 and 33. Then we have the death of Shem at 600 years old. You have the birth of Esau and Jacob. Then we're coming on down, Isaac, heir of all things, Genesis 25. The death of Abraham at 175 years. His survivors are listed in 1 Chronicles 1:28, Genesis 25:11, and the death of Eber, Genesis 11 and 17. Then we get ready to take up the story of Jacob. Okay, so I just wanted to get those life events in for Abraham up through his death before we start on Jacob. So again, those are out there. That information and data is out there for you in my Discord, Word on Fire, WOF Bible study. Click on the little pin at the top and you can see, if you click on Reese Cron Bible PDF, it will pull this Bible study outline up. So you can follow along from there. All right. So those are just, I know I ran through that really quickly, but I did want to give you the other life events that happened with Abraham, but I do want to get us up to Jacob. All right. So that gets us to where we want to be. And then that means we're going to start. We'll start with Esau's birthright. Genesis 25, 27 through 34. So if you're following, let me go ahead and put that up so you can see it. If you're following the outline, you're going to go over to January the 22nd, excuse me, and obtains Esau's birthright, Genesis 25. So point number 1, point number 2, and then we'll keep going on down and see how far we can get through the story of Isaac and Rebekah. All right, Jacob and then Isaac and Rebekah. All right, and so that will bring us to tomorrow and through the rest of this week. And I'm glad to hear that CJ Manning is all the way up to the story of Joseph. Thank you for that. And just keep reading. And for those that are ahead, I love it. I appreciate you. Thank you. And feel free, especially if you are engaged with the reading material, just keep reading because it'll feed you. And again, the goal here, we're going from Genesis all the way through Revelations. We're going to go through all 66 books right here at 6 o'clock. All right. I think it's 6:45, so I'm a little bit over, but I don't see any questions in the chat. I don't see any additional comments in the chat. But again, thank you so much for being here tonight. I love you. I really do. And we'll be back on tomorrow night. Take the highlights that I tried to pull out for you tonight. Marinate on the thoughts, marinate on the concepts. Again, what I really want you to do. Come on, CJ, man, eat it up, eat it up. I know once you get into it, it's almost like you can't stop. It's like you just can't stop. It's just good, especially if you enjoy reading the word of the Lord. All right. I love you guys. Take those little nuggets that I gave you tonight. Again, marinate on it, exercise it in your life. Don't try to get that whole big picture. Just let God reveal to you step by step. Just step by one day at a time, sweet Jesus. That's all we're asking. All right, just one step, one day at a time. And be obedient in all that God has told you to do. I love you so much. Good night.